这个谢谢啊，这个税生这个教授啊，刚才做了一个非常这个全面，而且一个相对这个针对这特朗普这个1.0到2.0的这8年来的一个全面的分析和总结与展望，我觉得分析的非常到位，而且确实像这个税生教授在美国居住了这个几十年，然后在从事学术，同时经常也这个关心国内的发展在两边这个推动这个方面的工作做了大量的这个桥梁推动纽带工作，所以我觉得讲得非常好。那么下面这部分呢，因为我们可能就要用英文，因为我们这个还有一部分这个对话是英文来这个举办的时候，因为我们还有一个国际上的受众，所以我们这个CCG Global Dialogue always in English. So from now, I would like to talk with Professor Zhao on this topic, from Trump 1.0 to 2.0 transition and analysis of China-U.S. relations. So we're having this CCG Global Dialogue today at CCG CBD office. And I'd like to also briefly introduce again to our English audience. Professor Suisheng Zhao is a director of a Center for China-U.S. Cooperation at the Josef Korbel School of International Studies, University of Denver. But he's also another very famous achievement is he's the founder and the editor of Journal of Contemporary China. So we know that is a top-ranking journals in the world on China studies. So he has made that journal, founded that journal for many years, and he's basically in the Chinese research and study domain. This is the really very influential journal, and then a lot of discussion has been made on U.S.-China as well, including global issues. So Suisheng, I think Suisheng, now it's interesting you talk about Graham. I met Graham at we invited him to CCG many times, but we had also here the same bet he made at Munich Security Conference this year in February. You were in January. I mean, he did that in Davos, but also February at Munich. He was betting with the chief editor of Foreign Affairs. Daniel was there. We was at our tables on the. I mean, the bet was for lunch or for $1,000 or whatever. But basically, he said the same thing, is that by the 2026 February, China-U.S. relation will be improved. That was his bet. So I have a little different view on that because I think we're still waiting for the high-level summit to happen between China and the U.S. Where during the last telephone call between President Trump and President Xi, they agreed they're going to have a bilateral visit. So who knows? After that bilateral visit, we could have a somewhat improved U.S.-China relations. But of course, I agree with you. In the long run, we will still have this competitive dynamic and relations. So I'd like to, maybe for a dialogue, I'd like to also focus on the Trump 2.0. I have several questions. So we'll have several questions, and then we may ask our colleagues, our audience here to raise some questions as well. So first question I would like to ask you is that there's remaining 3.5 years of President Trump in the office now. So what do you think are the biggest cooperation point that China can have with U.S.? Because since we cannot really as you just said, we cannot change each other. We cannot, we cannot really defeat each other. We might as well try our best to find anything we can work together. So what are the areas that you think we can work together? So that'll be my first question. And then if you give your thought on that, I may add something on that as well. Yeah. Professor Zhao, yes.
Thank you for the invitation and for the conversation. And before I answer this question, let me also pick up what you talk about the summit meeting, leaders meeting possibility. In fact, I think if there's a summit between the Chinese leader and President Trump by end of the year, there could be some significant change or improvement in the relationship. So in that context, I would urge China side to make as much effort as China could to facilitate this meeting. Trump himself, I think, is very eager to meet the Chinese leader. The New York Times, as the article said, he is obsessed to have a phone call with the Chinese leader. Even he himself said several times he had already phone calls, but it did not happen. That showed he was so eager. And if there is a meeting, I think a lot of issues in person could elaborate much better. And he's the person, is a big person who eager to show his respect by the global leaders. So in that case, if there's a meeting, that could happen. In that case, Edison could have a point. Okay. The opportunities by end of year, I think the two opportunities, there are possibility for meeting. One was the September 3rd, the Chinese military parade or celebration of the anti-fascist anniversary. People ask me if I don't know if he was invited or.
No, my personal observation is that I think China is certainly open for all the world leaders to come for this September 3rd, 80 years of anti-fascist celebration parade. We have to see. Putin has confirmed to come, and then we have other leaders to come. But if President Trump can make it, that'd be even great. So we could have another kind of Yalta style, with all the big heads of European leaders, Chinese leaders, American leaders, sit in Beijing and have a Beijing summit for the peace, right?
That would be a big win for China. In that case, I don't know if Trump would want to give Beijing such a big win. And also, U.S. domestic politics may not favor his visit. So in that case, I think that another opportunity would be the APEC, as informal leaders meeting in November in South Korea. I think that would be a very realistic opportunity. And also, China should use that opportunity not only in South Korea, but invite him to come to China for a state visit.
Yeah, but I have one more option as well. Is the if September 3rd in Beijing doesn't work, but mid-September, the UN summit for 80 years of established UN, also 80 years of a Second World War, and then they're going to have UN summit, and then UN could invite Chinese leaders to have another summit or have a brand new summit there to celebrate the Second World War victory, 80 years of a founding of UN. But also more important, I think China could help to US and Europe to finish this war that Russia had on Ukraine, because as I remember at the Munich Security Conference, we had the U.S. Defense Secretary said that let's send the peacekeeping forces to the borders, frozen borders of where he's fighting now. That it has to be European troops and non-European troops, peacemaking troops. So which means China is the largest peacekeeping sending troops from the UN Security Council members. So that could be another opportunity for China, India, Brazil, to really get involved on this last deadlock of Ukraine-Russian war, because President Trump is very frustrated now. He can't, after 6 months dealing with Putin, doesn't going anywhere. So I think it's time that China, as Foreign Minister Wang Yi said, the BRICS countries are the best mediators and also peacemakers. So I think, it's possible that we could have China, U.S., EU, BRICS country, Russia, Ukraine, that all these parties come together and through UN make a peace deal. So that's something China, U.S. can work together.
Yeah, that would be a great opportunity. The issue here is that Chinese president has not been at UN very often.
No. President Xi was there. I think 2017 or something. He made his
several
pledge.
times.
Several times he was made this pledge on before 2030 reach carbon peak and before 2060 reach carbon neutral. That was President Xi's commitment made at the UN.
So it's not what the Chinese leaders invited for UN assembly. Chinese leaders is always invited for those meetings. Is whether he is willing, able to attend. So the ball is on China's side. If he is going to go to UN,
no, as you just said, I mean, vice versa. If Trump comes to Seoul for APEC in November, if China invites him to visit US, same thing could happen. Chinese leaders goes to US, attend UN summit, but also US invite Chinese to have an official visit.
That's something.
Yeah.
Chinese,
so both sides has to work on
exactly.
that.
China side should work, approach proactively to the US that if we can go, if you can invite Chinese presidents.
Well, I'm sure there's a bilateral talks on those high level visits because that was the target set during the last phone call between the two leaders. That they're going to have a bilateral visit. President Trump invite President Xi to visit U.S. President Xi invite Trump to visit China. Yeah, so just who comes first. I mean, if there's convenient, there's a September two occasions in September and one occasion in November. So could happen at the end of this year.
If that happens, the Edison, as we still said, his prediction he will win that $1,000. Could. Then the question you asked about what issues China can work with the U.S.
So this is number one, peace deal that we can, rather than the trade deal, I think Trump attaches great importance on the peace deal.
Of course.
So if China can support, work with EU and U.S. and Russia on this peace deal, that would be really something.
The problem on the Ukraine war front on Russia's side, from American perspective, China has never taken a neutral position. China has although not directly military supported Russia, but provided the dual-use technology and equipment, and to a great extent morally supported.
Because I think
that's the problem. That's the issue. If China could clarify that position.
No, I had the president of America's a German think tank visit us the other day last week. He was saying a lot of German company, European company also provide a lot of dual-use goods to Russia through other channels. So that I mean, what is defined by dual-use? If rice, if eaten by the soldier, could be dual-use. So I think the thing is now the war is getting nowhere, and Trump is frustrated. He's threatening to involve again. So I think this is probably the best time.
Right. If China
that we work together
somehow reduce its support to Russia and work more with the U.S., EU on this front, I think Trump would be grateful. I heard Trump said in the Davos. Yeah.
He was in the video. He was saying he really welcomes China to involve on the Ukraine-Russian conflict and help China to solve this. So his invitation is there, and I think it's maybe during this summit this could be a good.
So China could
subject.
take a ball on this. You said you were in Davos. In fact, he said in his social media, he said he is willing to work with Chinese leaders. If China could help Russia, could help U.S., the issue will be resolved. So he has a high expectation.
He has expectation because U.S. is provide weapons and European is providing weapons to Ukraine. China does not provide any weapons to Russia. As Chinese foreign ministry said, if China provided weapon, the war is over many times. So it's over a long time ago. Yeah, so I think it's not who is support what, but let's see how we solve this. Having a a new Yalta to really solve this war issue probably would be a great deal for the peace summit. So I think
you talk about new Yalta, this type of concept. I think that's a concept Trump could accept because he thought the big powers could have a collision rather than competition. Collision meaning that China, Russia, and the U.S. could work together to resolve those conflicts, including Ukraine and the Middle East. Yeah. For U.S., I think that's time. They really want to move their strategic priority to Asia Pacific. Mm-hmm. But Middle East, they cannot get out of Middle East other than the Israel, Hamas war and Iran, Israel and all these kind of conflicts.
The other thing maybe I can ask you is now peace making is about the biggest denominator between China and the U.S. for not only for Ukraine, Russia, but also for Middle East, like you said. The second thing is that I agree with you. You mentioned about Trump is less ideological. He's less ideological. He never, actually, Graham Allison has documented what Trump has spoken since his election, 40, 50 times. Praise the Chinese leaders, say good things about China, never really give any very bad comment. So if he's less ideological, if he's no longer holding democracy summit versus autocracy, right? And then if he's no longer, also he's not interested in geopolitical encirclement on China. For example, he's talking about let's get out of AUKUS, even on that, right? But he does make a new move now. He's building up a trade war alliances, right? He's had a new deal with Vietnam, but he's aiming at China. He's had another deal with Japan, probably also had China in mind. So he's building up a tariff.
I don't know that part. Yeah. With Japan, now he is fighting with Japan. Japan will not compromise.
I know. But if, for example, the deal he made with Vietnam, if Vietnam made goods selling to them 20%.
Right. 40%
if it's transit 40%. So that is aimed at somebody, right?
I think that's reasonable. Because the tariffs on China shift all those offshore to Vietnam. That would be a problem for Vietnam and also for the United States.
Anyway, what I'm saying is that he's less geopolitical, less security as his predecessor Biden, but he's probably a bit more, or his staff is a bit more focused on the economic address. But which is to the point now. If he's doing things economically, I don't think China is that afraid of. China has been really more competitive now and more resilient and is ready for this economic cooperation. For example, while Trump is raising tariff with everyone, China has reduced 53 countries' tariff to China 0. So you can see the contrast. So China probably. So that's what I mean is that in the long term, as you said, because of the mutual deterrence of military, we're going to wipe out each other if we got a hot war. So there's no option of hot war, even on Taiwan. Then the only thing remained is peaceful competition through economic arena. So would that be a thing that
I don't think that will happen at this time. He is launching tariff war not only against China, but all over the world. And so he's competing with everyone. Everyone has to buy in his deal and make deal bilaterally with the United States. So in that context, his competition in the economic tariff front with China would be in a different environment. On the one hand, that the U.S. does not have the ability to work to, as you said, build an alliance, not the geopolitical alliance, but also even trade alliance. I think it's very difficult for them for the U.S. to establish against China because he offends all other countries, including those countries around China, peripheries. On the other hand, he is very tough on every country, including China. So he would want to make sure, in his mind, China would not take advantage of United States. China would have the fair playground with the United States. That's his mind. In that case, I don't think a lot of his terms China could accept.
Yeah.
It's a very tough deal.
Yeah. I think you're right. And what I think is the Trump is less security-wise or military-wise, but of course he's switching a bit to the economic competition now, because building this tariff circles or tariff war is really focused on economy, which I think he's probably stimulated by China, because China has in contrast to what Biden does. Biden did is build up security, AUKUS, Quad, Camp David, and China is doing RCEP, BRI, CPTPP, and China, Africa, China, Middle East, China, Latin America, Africa, all those economic alliances. So Trump is starting to learn China and also do some through the trade war. He's building up an economic alliance through the trade war. But again, U.S. is only about 13% of global trade. The 87% is trading with China. China is the largest trading country in the world. So
that's a big concern now in the U.S. among a lot of economists and scholars. America is isolating itself. The world move forward, and international globalization without the United States, and regional integration without the United States. So in that context, Trump is destroying American economy, American global status, isolate the U.S. itself. That will create opportunities for China.
Yeah.
And also you mentioned that even from those trade war, tech war, Trump's objective is to isolate China, but eventually will buy back against the United States. One example people talked about is that the U.S. tries to reduce production chain, value chain dependence on China. But if he reduced all those interdependence, he will not have any leverage on China. Because if U.S. does not buy anything from China, how he can put pressures on China? And in the meantime, China has also used the opportunity to develop its own technology, innovative products. So that hurt America. That's a lot of people concerned in America.
Yeah. So what I think now is since we have MAD, mutual assured destruction, strategic deterrence on both sides, hard war is not an option anymore. But economic competition is really geared up. What Trump did and what China is defending, and China is prepared. And then what I can see is this kind of in the next phase of a competition, it will be the green transition and AI. We had Jason Huang in Beijing these 2 days, and he's saying China has 50% of global AI talent, very big. And also, if we think about from UK when they globalized the world, they invented the steam power. When U.S. globalized the world, they invented electricity, computers, digital economy. Now, when China probably going to globalize the world, China now has the green power, has the AI also coming up. So we have a different, phase of competition and public dominance. But so what I'm asking is with this, can U.S. and China, including EU, peacefully compete, rather than we have to go to the war?
It should be peacefully. Of course, as you said, the hard war is not possible because nuclear powers cannot fight nuclear powers. That would destroy the world. So the competition now is primarily, especially on Trump 2.0, economic front. And Trump's policy is basically learn from China. In fact, learn from state capitalism. Even Joe Biden already started the state capitalism using the state subsidies and build industrial policy to protect domestic market against globalization. In fact, China benefits tremendously from globalization in this process developed. In the meantime, China also had its own industrial policy and state capitalism. U.S. criticized China for a long time. Now U.S. is learning from China. I don't know how good U.S. could be learning from China, but could that be successful? China succeeded by using this state capitalism and industrial policy. And in the 21st century now, in the AI age, then new technology age, this industrial policy and protectionism, could that really help American economy? I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
And that could isolate the United States and eventually delay the progress, even in technological innovation, in the competition, AI and many other fronts. Is really something very, very uncertain for U.S.
Yeah, I agree that U.S. is stimulated by the Chinese practice. Now is put a more state capitalism into the practice probably. But China is actually quite unique. I mean, the system China has in the last 47 years since it opened up, China is already, the economy is supported by trilateral pillar. You know, the private sector, 60%, another 20% SOE, you know, does all the dirty jobs. And then another 20% multinational employ 40 million people, generate 1/3 of China's export business. So this kind of a trilateral hybrid economy is really, you know, second to none in the world. So I think there's something, China must have done something right. Of course, embrace globalization is another thing, lift 800 million people out of poverty. But now I would like to press the other thing. We talked, you know, because mutual destruction of deterrence will prevent in the hard war, but then the issue of Taiwan is a hot spot. So what do you see the China-U.S. cooperation on you know, or on the Pacific peacefully? And let's solve this issue peacefully too. So how do you think on this issue? Hot button.
Taiwan issue is a very dangerous, the most dangerous issue. Yes. When I gave a talk in the U.S., the question from audience asked mostly is Taiwan. Yeah. Everybody is concerned about if China will use force to cross Taiwan Strait, and what can America do for that? My sense here is that it's very dangerous for sure, but could be less dangerous. Here, when it became dangerous is because the status quo has been changed in the last decade or so. U.S. Taiwan policy is so-called one China policy, which talks about there is only one China, but neither side of Taiwan Strait could unilaterally change the status quo, could use force to change status quo. U.S. support peaceful resolution, not peaceful unification. So that's very two different terms. If you both sides agree unification, be it, but be peaceful. We support resolution, not unification. That's American policy. And in this process, U.S. has been very clear that neither side should change status quo. For many years, China has emphasized so-called peaceful unification and played a long game to achieve peaceful unification with so-called strategic patience. That's what the U.S. has seen China's policy. And Taiwan's, here is a three parties game here. Taiwan for many years also agreed that there's one China, but the so-called pro-independence force has been developed since the 1990s. And Taiwan's status quo has been changed primarily by the Taiwan pro-independence forces. But U.S. has never criticized Taiwan's pro-independence force for the change in status quo. And the U.S. itself has also changed its status quo policy because when Taiwan became, in the American mind, democratic with elections, a lot of American politicians became very sympathetic to Taiwan, like-minded, and we should support like-minded people. So more and more American politicians try to show their sympathy to Taiwan. That reflects in the U.S. policy to Taiwan. They increased the official exchanges, increased arms sale to Taiwan. So that's a change, the status quo. I mentioned that for many years, U.S. had a strategic ambiguity policy toward Taiwan, meaning that we will involve, but we will not tell what will involve, how it will involve. That's a double deterrence. On the one hand, they try to deter China, said, don't do anything. Also deter Taiwan, don't be provocative. So double deterrence, that's their policy. But this policy was changed by Joe Biden. He said in public, to media, 4 times that the U.S. treated Taiwan as a NATO ally. In other words, if there is a military conflict across Taiwan Strait, U.S. would get involved 4 times. And also, he not only increased arms sale to Taiwan, but also he increased arms aid to Taiwan according to military financing act, which is the law they use to help Ukraine. So that crossed China's red line. But U.S. in the meantime blamed China for change the status quo because they said China became national patient. China leaders said we cannot let Taiwan issue pass on from generation to generation. And China increased military exercise and also activities across the Taiwan Strait, including blockade, all those kind of exercise. So America blamed China for this.
Yeah.
The last point here is that Trump now changed. Trump in office, Trump 2.0, I think is different. Trump is very different from traditional American politicians. He did not have any attachment to Taiwan. And he treated Taiwan as a prom. He could treat Taiwan as just a product for anything he wants to get. So he could sacrifice Taiwan for whatever China can get from China. And he also thought Taiwan took advantage of American generosity, like chips, all those things took out of U.S. Production. So he had a lot of problems with Taiwan.
Yeah. Well, I think that you just mentioned, the U.S. attachment to Taiwan they thought Taiwan is a so-called democracy, but now this the world now you see democracy versus autocracy narrative is not as working as effective as you did in the Biden era, where he promotes strongly democracy. You look at in the UN Security Council voting, Russia, U.S. voted together, China, EU voted together. I was in February in Paris for the AI summit, where China, EU, Germany, France, India voted for the AI declaration, where UK and US, veto for that. So there's no longer China versus West or West versus the West, that kind of scenario. So it has been blurred, and also in Taiwan, as a matter of fact, I think the TPP for independence is getting less popular. For example, the last election, January election, 60% voters voted for parties that pro-peaceful unification. They are majority at the parliament. So What I think probably the opportunity now comes, as you said, if Trump is less ideological, he thinks Taiwan has stolen U.S. chips technology and didn't pay the insurance fee, then probably, we had a good opportunities that China is actually, mainland has actually accelerated the peaceful unification process. For example, Fujianese government announced, since last year, any Taiwanese come to Fujian, free schooling, Medicare, employment, social security, treat you as a local. I hope that policy can be expanded to whole China. There's 2 million Taiwanese working in the mainland. 500,000 husband wives are married across the street. So I think, before DPP took over, the 6 million mainland flooded Taiwan for tourists, sending the money to tourism, So I think, if China mainland wants to buy Taiwan out, I think 1.4 billion people can buy 23 million people out. Why they want to get independent? Because China already said, we don't need your pay taxes on mainland at all. So if Trump have this kind of new attitude, and then we can peacefully buy Taiwan out of this. Of course, we will not tolerate any independence or separate moves, but I think the time is on the mainland side, and I think the unification eventually will come. Who is going to refuse you send me the money? And why should I get independent? I'm going to have a hardship and facing a war prospect. But if I'm getting along with the Great Federation of China, I don't pay taxes. I maintain my.
But do you think China has that much money to buy off?
Well, what I mean by China to buy is that let's have 5 million Taiwanese working in the mainland. There's 2 million already.
Okay.
Get 5 million.
Do we have that jobs for them?
Yeah, they have. And let's have a 10 million mainland flooded Taiwan, spending the money, restaurant, hotel, buying a Taiwanese product. Taiwan enjoys bigger surplus with mainland too. So if that happens in 10 years' time, if there's no foreign interference, I see the peaceful unification is going to happen.
China has used this type of Taiwan's 已经 using the economic to push for politics. Never successful.
Oh, no,
to buy.
For example, Taiwan now refuses mainland tourists to go to Taiwan. Mm-hmm. And like Qingde is even tighter now. It said, it treated China as a foreign forces. It's making a lot of
hostile foreign forces.
There are a lot of white terror happening now in Taiwan.
But Qingde is very popular in Taiwan.
I know.
I was in Taipei last year, January election. I was an observer. Yes. American delegation to observe Taiwan. At that time, Taiwan had a lot of confidence in Taiwan. After the election result came out, the U.S. government sent some former officials, Joe Biden government, to make sure Taiwan will not be provocative. Taiwan collaborated with U.S. very well at that time.
Yeah, but the thing is now, if 60% didn't vote for DPP, TPP, the DPP.
That's the parliament. That's the 立法院 legislative yuan.
Of course. So which means the majority of Taiwanese voters doesn't want the independence. Basically, they voted.
We now can look at this month, July 26th. Yeah. They have a recall.
Yeah. Recall. Whatever. So what I think is that my advice is that we use this economic incentive. Use this, let's make the carrot sweeter,
Yeah, that's a very, very good point, a very interesting point. But I just don't know if that will work eventually. You put all those money. The China give a lot of preferential policy treatment to Taiwan investments
I think China is willing, if we already have if Fujianese government has already a policy, welcome all the Taiwanese come to work in the Fujian. If the 31 province...
But for me, I think it's a big strategic geopolitical environment. While for many years I went to Taiwan, those people, all 60% or more, thought there is conflict, America will come to our SQ, them SQ. Now changed.
Absolutely. Even for the Ukraine war, U.S. said, we're not going to send any soldiers. We're not going to be there. Who is going to vote for Taiwan? I mean, if something happens.
Since Trump came to office, 60% of Taiwan people will not trust America, will not think America to
So if that happens, if the American reduce the interference there, and then then they will really recognize the Greater China, and then of course allow the activities to happen on both sides.
There's another polling number there, is that a majority of Taiwan people still don't want to be united with the United States, but 30% already they thought we have no choice. China become stronger. U.S. will not come to our rescue.
I believe this. It's just sitting neighboring. ASEAN is under different ethnicity, different. They are economic entity. You have European Union, different countries. They all work together. Why mainland and Taiwan is all from same culture, language, heritage, relatives? Why can't they get together? So I think that day will come if we really.
That's what I believe too. Eventually.
Yes.
But how long the eventual?
No, I think now as China gets stronger, as the hard war is not possible.
I went to
then
Taiwan
we have to do the economic
first time
integration.
in 1990, as a mainland China background scholar in the U.S. When I got Taiwan that time, I thought, wow, Taiwan was economically so advanced, much more advanced than China. At that time, they just began to build the 捷运, the night rail system.
Now it's falling behind.
Right. Exactly. That's the point there. So at that time, 1990, China was still far behind Taiwan. And
Taiwan still has a lot of advantages like chips making and things like that.
Right. Then now Taiwan's economy is just like one province of China.
Yeah.
And I still remember I talked to Michael Oxenberg, and before he passed away in 2020, he is a very strong believer in the unification. But for many years, he thought economically these two countries, two sides, have to be integrated. And the China economy should be much stronger than Taiwan. Then his second thought was the political system. He thought if these two sides could narrow that gap.
Well, I really see the world is getting more tolerant of different systems. For example, the BRICS blocks.
Mm-hmm.
You have India as the largest democracy. You have Russia. You have China. You have Middle East kingdom, royal families. The BRICS country, bloc is working well with a different governing system. So the war is no longer treated as the black and white, the democracy versus autocracy. It's allow different forms of governance and models to flourish at the same time, peacefully compete. Well, China's model, good or not, let's peacefully compete. So Taiwan model, good or not, let's peacefully compete. So if that really works for the next mega trend, I think eventually we should be recognize each other legitimately. If like Deng Xiaoping said, doesn't matter the white cat, black cat, as long as the case is mine.
This could happen under Trump.
Yes, that's right. We said
possible. So that guy, as you said, take advantage of the 3.5 years.
Yes. Okay, good. We're open for one or two questions. If you have any, Zhichen, do you have any question to ask? There is microphone. Zhichen is a CCG editor for Pekinology. But the microphone. We have to use microphone to get the video.
Good to see you, Professor Zhao. And I was wondering, I spent the last year in the U.S. and I was told by some Americans who believe that, President Donald Trump could be the only and perhaps the last remaining hope for China to have a very different leader, because as you have suggested, for example, he has the power to make a lot of different policy choices, regardless of what the national security and foreign policy establishment believes. And against, the popular will, he can make foreign policy decisions like the one in Russia, which stands in contrast with what the U.S. Traditionally believe. He is apparently not an ideologue. He's not interested in color revolutions or regime change abroad, and he is known to be very transactional. And it's really unimaginable that the United States will have a similar leader in the next maybe 4 years, 10 years, or 20 years. So from that perspective, President Trump, as tough as the challenge he presents to China in diplomacy, he might really be someone, a rare beast that China has to deal with. So from that perspective, some say, Beijing should jump at the opportunity to really deal with him, but at a level of risk taking that's typically not usual in Beijing. I was wondering if you would agree with that.
I agree to a certain great extent because 川建国 in English, they really translate that into English. A lot of building China, not build U.S. Trump is built China.
And if you believe that to some extent, what would be your advice to Beijing? Because
I don't think I could give advice to Beijing, and I can tell you what's going on there. In the U.S. now, the media, especially liberal media, critical of Trump's media, flood of the articles talking about whatever Trump has done is good for China. And all those is with a nod. Steve Young, those former ambassadors, those former diplomats, they know China so well. And they all published articles on whatever Trump policy came out, said, this is good to China. This is good to China. Almost everything is good to China. This is a very strong discourse in the US now, talking about China. Trump is not only hawk. I mean, even Edison, his first article, I mean, during the Davos conference, Davos conference, he talked about is Trump a China hawk? Question mark. Yeah, and not only him, a lot of mainstream scholars, commentators, they all wrote about Trump is good China. So how China could deal with that, could take advantage of that China's business.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add Professor Zhao's comment. I think that Trump has ushered in a new era. I mean, from the 1.0, when he was starting the trade war with China, nobody would expect, he would be that kind of a president, which distorted the, bilateral and multilateral relations. Create the WHO and Paris Accord and all those things. And then so that impact we are still feeling today. And then second term, he's even more so on that. So I think U.S. is shifting from more geopolitical focus to more economical trade focus, which is gradually diluted this ideological divide. And then boils down to, let's compete, make American great again, make China great again, make a world great again. So let's peacefully compete. So it may not be a bad thing to usher in a new era of economic competition. So we wait and see. Let's have a second question. Yeah. Okay, we take two maybe. 那个你们拿个话筒。
Thank you very much, Professor Zhao, and thank you for the fascinating talk and the fascinating conversation between you and Henry. So I'm an economist by training. So I want to ask a question about the driving force behind this bilateral relationship. You talk about we are experiencing a long cycle of this bilateral relationship between China and the U.S. And, I heard earlier from Justin Ling as an economist who said that, when China's GDP, the size of China's GDP reaches, doubles the size of the US GDP, then this bilateral relationship will stabilize and then they can cooperate. But I wonder what's your view on that? What are the key ingredients? or driving forces behind this bilateral relationship? Do you think this economic force is the only one, or there are other forces?
Perhaps introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yes, I'm a young economist by training and working at the international organization based in Beijing. Thank you.
Indeed, if China could double its GDP and overtake the U.S. economy, the relationship will be changed fundamentally. But if China could do that in any time soon, I don't know that will happen. Even that happens, China per capita GDP is still far behind the U.S. I traveled in China, although a lot of people in the U.S. said China is a threat. China is the already developed countries. You go to many places in China, the toilets is very different from America, far away. So I think that if that happened, that could change. But if that will happen, any time when that will happen, I don't know. And in the U.S. now, the prevailing view is that China not only peaked, China will slow down dramatically in the long run. China demographic situation even worse. By 2050, there are a lot of predictions. The Chinese population will be equal American population, would add 700 million people. If China declined to 100 million people, U.S. increased very dramatically, not only by immigration, but also by natural birth. It's a much better position than China. So if that's the case, I don't think Justin Lin talked the situation will happen anytime soon.
So that's why I think CCG is also promoting we should welcome global talent coming to China, right? So so we should.
That's good opportunity now because Trump's immigration policy. That's the best time now. 3 years after will change.
Okay, we have a final question. Okay, with the glass, the gentleman. Okay. 说一下你的单位哈。
Thank you very much for the final question opportunities. I'm Luis Liu from DP Technologies, and we do the international trade and provide supply chain solutions for aviation. And as we know, the export control from US control the CFM engines for the aircraft, the C919. And on the other hand, China export control the rare earths to US. And what do you think is about the latest trade war? And do you see it can become to a warmer or the colder situation in the future? Another question is, we talk about the Taiwan issue. As we know, the most of the high-level chips produced by TSMC in Taiwan. If there is Taiwan issue going to tariff, how to keep the supply chain solution for high-end chips to make sure the world economy can be safe? Thank you.
On the specific trade deal, on the engines, talk about those parts versus rare earth. I think China and US already reached some kind of agreement on this. China already renexed rare earth exports to the United States, issued more license, and US also have already reopened the exports of those parts to China. I think those deals are really good. I think it will continue if the current negotiation sustains and can move forward. Those issues could be resolved. On the second question about the chips, they have invested in the U.S. Already built in Arizona and some other places to try to prevent that situation. But I don't think how successful that could be. For Trump, it's better you just move all production to the United States. But I don't think that happen. U.S. does not have that many skilled laborers, and also the labor cost is so high. So that was still a problem for China, U.S. and Taiwan sides.
Yeah, I may just briefly add. I think that you see this China actually is much better prepared for the second time the trade war than Trump 1.0. So as a matter of fact, you see China was forced to use some capacity like rare earths, and then immediately we see the changes happen. The U.S. relaxed the chips export. So which means that the strategy of stopping, restricting, or this kind of measure is not really going to be that effective. Actually, backfire. China will accelerate its chip production, and U.S. is losing its business. So now they are thinking, better terms now. So they relax. I think China certainly will relax. So that is the way to go. As far as the Taiwan is concerned, I would think that U.S. Apple was so correct. I used to have Intel. People mentioned that they used to buy Intel chips. Now they switched to Taiwanese chips. The software was made in Taiwan. Hardware was made in China. Foxconn, 80% of the phone was made in China, and Apple became the largest company in the world. So you can see how important this part of the world is still to the U.S. economy. Like Tesla, 50% of cars made in EV car made in China. Walmart purchased 60% of supplies from China. So that's why Trump, during the trade war, 400 million deficit, he immediately lowered 100 million for the benefit of U.S. companies for importing from China. So I think we're getting the world more intertwined, and the Chinese strategies intertwine the world economically, and the U.S. probably is still doing that, try to separate that, but I don't think that's going to work. So I think we probably, Professor Zhao needs to go to the airport pretty soon, so we'll have to conclude here. So on behalf of CCG, we thank Professor Zhao very much for sharing his great views and insights for our colleagues and all the experts and people from different parts of Beijing. And so we'll give the final word to Professor Zhao.
Thank you again for the opportunity. I want to echo what Huiyao talked about. China is much better prepared this time and demonstrate its strength. For Trump, he believes in strength. That's the key point to deal with Trump.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much.